Bienvenue à Ottawa au Forum national.
My name is Adam Young, and I'm also a youth ambassador with Experiences Canada 150&Me, and I'm honored to be invited to be your MC at today's event.
Addie, and I am also a youth ambassador with Experiences Canada 150&Me, and honored to be invited to be your MC at today's event.
Nous voudrions commencer en soulignant que les terres sur lesquelles nous sommes réunis font partie de
We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people.
Gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. For many thousands of years, the Anishinaabe people have sought to walk gently on this land. They offered assistance to the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was at times a harsh climate.
L'événement d'aujourd'hui est diffusé en direct sur la web dans tout le Canada.
Today's event is being live streamed on the internet, and in addition to those of you in the audience, we're pleased to welcome an estimated 600 young people.
In addition to those of you in the audience, we are pleased to welcome an estimated 600 young people from 6 provinces and territories to our event today. For online participants, we encourage you to provide feedback to our dedicated email, forum150@experiencescanada.ca.
Nous avons maintenant l'honneur d'accueillir le gouverneur général.
We're delighted to welcome the Governor General of Canada.
Our guest is 14-year-old Thielen Kixnoway. Thielen is Wolf Clan and Potawatomi and Cree and is a member of the Walpole Island in southern Ontario.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the arrival of His Excellency, the Right Honourable David Johnston, Governor General of Canada. Mesdames et Messieurs, veuillez vous lever pour l'arrivée de...
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of David Johnston, Governor General of Canada.
Please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem.
Veuillez demeurer debout pour l'hymne national.
Terre de nos aïeux, ton front est ceint de fleurs en glorieux, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God, keep land, glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
You may be seated. Le projet Canada 150
Our project, Canada 150&Me, began with a simple idea some 5 years ago. We knew that Canada's 150th birthday was fast approaching, and we wanted to find an original way of highlighting Canadian youth.
Communities were facing Canada for their generation. Over 1,200 responded by submitting projects online, artworks, videos, essays, dance and music compositions, and spoken word presentations. From among those
able to participate as volunteers for organizations directly involved in the issues they were interested in. They had the opportunity to hear inspiring leaders. During each 1 week stay, there was a one-day forum that was held. Among the some 3,000 youth who participated in these events, online or in person, as visitors or local hosts, a new group of 150 young leaders were chosen to come here to Ottawa in order to present their conclusions to representatives of the government, the business world, and community organizations.
groups, and I've only had a short time since being selected in early June to think about what they want to say, and even less time since Saturday night to meet each other and work together to prepare the presentations you will see this morning. But here we are, after months of conversations across the country and lots of personal effort on the part of the 150 youth here today. This is their moment to shine, so we are going to let them take it from here. Mesdames et messieurs, veuillez accueillir.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the National Forum Youth Participants of Canada 150&Me.
Youth participants of Canada 150&Me.
Good morning. My name's Thomas Duck, and I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
My name's Jeevan, and I'm from Surrey, BC.
And my name is Sky, and I'm from Kelowna, BC. We believe the best way to celebrate Canada's 150 is by working towards a more sustainable future. Our video focuses on how we can mitigate and adapt to environmental issues over the next 150 years.
We as youth are concerned citizens when it comes to environmental issues because we are seeing and hearing about the impacts all around us. The environment is the main issue which youth today are concerned about.
We need to bridge the gap between our generations and have open dialogue regarding environmental issues. We wish to work with you, not against you. We hope you enjoy our short film. Thank you.
En grandissant en Colombie-Britannique, j'ai vu les effets qu'ont eu les changements climatiques sur les océans. Les centaines de milliers des étoiles de mer qui vivaient au fond des océans sont apparemment éradiquées, potentiellement à cause d'une augmentation des températures des océans.
Growing up at the EI, I've seen the effects of pollution in our water. Factors such as runoff can cause things like poor watershed quality and hypoxia. This allows invasive species like the green crab to thrive. If we don't stop polluting, it will be detrimental to the island.
I wasn't born in Fort McMurray. My first summer was full of smoke and worry, while everybody else was just casually rolling around in a town full of smoke. Everybody else had casually accepted the environmental problems that were in Fort Mac, the strangest of which being the inescapable smoke that just blanketed the town.
We spent the last 150 years unknowingly promoting these issues. It is now time to act. We represent the future, and we want to take this opportunity to work together with other generations to fix these problems.
Les politiciens doivent penser à notre futur, parce que le développement durable, ce n'est pas un pipeline de traverser à 860 de nos cours d'eau au Québec.
Current environmental laws, policies, and enforcement will not sustain the future. Carbon tax on individuals will not be as effective as that on large corporations. Laws on littering and residential pollution are not strong enough to keep the level of carbon in our atmosphere low enough to adhere to Canada's goals.
These policies have been damaging the environment without us batting an eye. This needs to change. We must put forward comprehensive solutions to these issues as soon as possible if we want to have any chance of reversing the effect of climate change.
The switch to renewable energy presents a huge opportunity for Canada. Renewable energy generates way more jobs than thermal power, and it isn't subject to huge fluctuations in prices the way coal or oil are. Also, it improves the health for many Canadians because it reduces pollution, which can cause stuff like neurological damage, lung disease, and cancer.
Nous avons plusieurs parcs nationaux au Canada pour nous permettre de sauver certaines espèces contre la chasse. Par contre, malgré ces parcs nationaux, nous ne pouvons pas nécessairement les sauver de d'autres problèmes tels les changements climatiques. Pour y remédier, nous pouvons sensibiliser la population et leur permettre de participer à des expériences de bénévolat pour remédier aux problèmes.
Instilling government rebates based off of how productive businesses are, while taxing them for carbon emissions, will keep Canadian businesses effective, carbon cautious, and in Canada. Same with households. If everyone pays carbon tax and then you have the money from that distributed equally by using less carbon, households can make money on this. While designating farming fuels will be exempt, as in Alberta, the money from tax will go to updating farming equipment to reduce emissions.
Thank you for watching.
I'm Julie and I'm from British Columbia.
Et je m'appelle Lily et j'habite.
I'm Lily, I live in Alberta.
Leaders that are working towards a brighter future together.
Mais nous sommes
We are a generation that need your help to create change in Canada and everywhere in the world.
In 50 years, do you want the future generations to say they should have? Because we would rather have them say, I'm grateful they did. Thank you.
Merci.
Bonjour et bienvenue au Canada.
Hello and welcome to Canada. We are in 2017. Our confederation was set up 150 years ago.
July
Notre histoire.
57.
We have the opportunity today to reflect upon our grand Canadian history.
Past or present, we ask you to visualize Canada.
We are the government.
We are dedicated to protecting our rivers and our bodies of water and stopping the planet from becoming even hotter. We are saving our trees and our species and taxing pollution. We are going to provide a better solution.
We are the environment.
An environment where our oceans are being overfished and our land is being depleted of natural resources. An environment where our packaging and plastic fills our lungs and veins and where our economic value is more important than our survival.
We are the future.
We are the future, a future where regulations are more than rhetoric towards sustainable fishing, a future where unnecessary packaging is a mistake of the past, an Arctic that holds our fresh water and resources for many generations, an upcoming educated public on food production and consumption. What will you do?
We are the government. We have put in ample amounts of funds into our education system. We have created an environment for diverse learning. We are doing enough, and we don't think this should be a problem.
We are the students. We've been in school for the majority of our lives, and we can definitely recite the quadratic equation, but we don't understand how the real world works. You tell us we are the leaders of tomorrow, but we're not exposed to what the world is like today.
We are the future. We see a country where finance is not an anchor to quality education.
We see a country where international learning opportunities are valued more than a grade.
We see a country that builds the leaders of tomorrow.
What will you do?
We are the government. Overall, Canada is a welcoming nation, a nation where Adrian Clarkson, who arrived here a penniless immigrant, went on to become the Governor General of Canada, a company where 1 of every 5 people is an immigrant.
We are the immigrants.
Canada imposed a Chinese Immigration Act of between 1923 to 1946, essentially stopping Chinese immigration. Adrian Clarkson was very lucky to be admitted in Canada. Whereas Canada has 4 refugees for 1,000 people, Sweden has 15. We can do better.
We've implemented the role of cultural guides closer to city centers for our newly arrived immigrants and refugees. This is how the immigrants and refugees adjust to Canada and our way of life. What will you do?
We are the government.
We're moving towards healing, reconciling, and resolving the sad legacy of assimilation.
We are the indigenous people.
The money that you have allocated to us is being used for corrupt purposes. You neglect our basic human rights with no access to clean water, housing, social services, healthcare, and numerous other basic violations. The effects of residential schools have led to intergenerational trauma by what could be considered genocide. 1 in 2 Indigenous women will be assaulted in their lifetime, and in some reserves, the incest rate can be as high as 80%.
We are the future. Funds must be accounted for and allocated to social programs. Il doit avoir une
There has to be a proportional representation for Aboriginal people. Excuses won't repair the damage that the government caused, but initiatives will make a difference.
Step up as a nation to be a role model, as the plight of the Indigenous people is one shared throughout the world. What will you do?
Now that we have reflected upon our country's downfalls and triumphs,
We ask you, as 150 years have passed, what would you like to see the next 150 years to be like?
Together, we can write our own history. Ensemble, nous écrivons notre histoire. What will you do?
Happy 150th birthday, Canada.
But has it really only been 150 years? Because as far as I know, Indigenous people have lived on this land for much, much longer.
And even after welcoming settlers with open arms, they were oppressed through the false promises and deplorable value of life while killing the Indian within the child.
But they were not the only ones brutally treated.
After Confederation, many groups of people were offered opportunities in exchange for the risks of settlement.
However, this offer only applied to the wealthy white people. For example, the Chinese immigrants had to pay an expensive price for simply being who they are.
Through the fear of the unknown, racism gained prominence and segregation took place.
Fortunately, leaders such as Viola Desmond paved the way for equality and acceptance all throughout Canada.
This initiative spearheaded revolutions, which led to the Canada that the world knows today.
Canada indeed is currently facing various issues and challenges such as climate change, contribution to overseas pollution, racial discrimination, the settlement of newcomers, and the lack of current peacekeeping missions.
Currently, the whole planet is facing several obstacles. Environmentally, many problems such as global warming and thinning of the ozone layer mean that Canada, contrarily to other countries, has taken good initiatives. For example, the carbon tax for the carbon emitted by factories. Having said this, our nation has also taken bad decisions in the past which have effects nowadays. A few short examples are the help given to people with mental issues and the destruction of the Aboriginal identity. As for the racial treatment, our country has provided vast improvements. Nowadays, this subject is very much present in the media and in education. We have much more liberties since Trudeau father, and we have had equal marriage and consider the LGBTQ community as a full part of the Canadian society, which is not uniform throughout the world. Malgré ces obstacles, le Canada devient plus acceptant et plus accueillant, essaye de promouvoir les pratiques viables au niveau local et au niveau international en soutenant les nations en développement et prépare le chemin pour être un leader plutôt que de simplement suivre les pas des autres nations.
One of the most important things for us to do as a country in the future is to develop our leadership skills in the international community. We must stand up for what we believe in and advocate for our beliefs, not only inside, but outside our borders as well. We should promote our acceptance of diversity and utilize our power and influence as a first world nation. Furthermore, it is crucial for us to be practical implementers in the issues we believe in. We must publicize less and deliver more.
Instead of publicizing each major achievement, such as the admittance of refugees into our great nation, how about increasing the number of refugees? Instead of publicizing our support for the mental health sector, we should develop a framework that increases funding for mental health initiatives. Let's get one thing. Our country is truly inspirational with its acceptance of the LGBTQ and other minority groups, as well as its renowned reputation for its global peacekeeping efforts. But to truly distinguish ourselves from the rest of the industrialized world, we must do three things: execute, lead, and globally implement. We, as the youth of today and the future leaders of tomorrow, will do our best to begin this change with an everlasting impact. It's time to change Canada forever. It's time to be known as global leaders.
My name is Samantha Kiao, and this is a poem I wrote for Canada 150&Me. We are the leaders of tomorrow, but we are also the commanders of today. Take a look in the mirror and behold your reflection. Is a person staring back at you the person you really want to see, or are there ripples in the glass? Fix your hair, smooth your shirt, and hope and hope and hope that these problems will go away, that the world can fix itself, that Canada can fix itself. But it won't. It never will, not until we figure out how. We are peacekeepers, we are mediators, but we are also at the forefront of our generation, of our society. So the question I ask you now is, are we doing enough? Are we using this power to promote change, or are we just standing on the sidelines watching? Because Canada, stop watching and start doing something.
We come from an indigenous reserve in Canada.
We lack housing. We lack clean water.
The government won't listen. We have no support.
Our language and our culture are being erased from our society, and we seem to be the only ones who care.
We are seen as outsiders, as the odd ones, yet we were here first.
Why are they taking away our voice?
Why are they taking away our Canada?
J'ai 11 ans de cours d'anglais obligatoire.
I have only 6 years of mandatory French education.
Est-ce que le gouvernement pense que l'anglais est plus...
Does government think that English is more important than French?
It's between our education systems.
Parfois,
Sometimes I feel that I have to speak in English.
Outside of my classroom, I have no opportunities to practice my French.
Grâce à mon
Thanks to my education, I can easily talk in English.
Grade 9, I am never given the opportunity to become fluent in French. Having French as a second language in Canada opens so many doors. With more French education, I would be able to reach these opportunities. But right now, I cannot.
Plusieurs Québécois ont le sentiment d'être...
Many Quebecers feel they're ignored, that they're not heard by our leaders who represent us, whom we elected. Our language is the core of our culture, we just want to protect it. Many Quebecers are open to the idea of being fully part of Canada, but the loss of the French language shouldn't be the price to pay. The different governments should make compromises so as to integrate the Quebec culture within the rest of Canada.
I'm new here. Do you even notice? Migrated from abroad. Finding a new home was the motive.
Canada is filled with opportunities.
I hear all the great stories, but I don't see the unity.
I'm walking down the street. I feel their eyes on me. Don't be what to judge. Don't hold a grudge.
They see my clothes, but they don't know my choice. They hear my accent, but they don't hear my voice.
I dreamed of being successful and rising to the top, but all the locked doors only made me stop.
Don't say I didn't try because I gave it my all. The past is held against me. The reality made me fall.
Oui, je sais que je viens d'ailleurs.
I know I come from elsewhere, that my customs and my face scare you. But learn me with an open mind and stop closing your borders.
Je me sens plein de désespoir.
In this country I feel full of despair. My search for work is difficult. I want a future with more hope. Make my life easier.
Communities need our help. We need to rethink the reserve housing model, working towards independence for its people. We need to invest in water filtration systems within our reserves. And most importantly, we need to encourage the exposure of our Indigenous culture, working towards a more equal society.
We need to implement more French in our English schools. Make our language education systems balanced and give young Canadians the same opportunities.
We also need to put a stronger French presence in our English communities and give classes for adults so our country can become more bilingual.
Le gouvernement fédéral doit reconnaître.
The federal government has to recognize that Quebecers want to be part of Canada whilst keeping their culture. The governments have to communicate and make compromises.
Our country can become more empowered and united.
Skilled immigrants arrive in Canada and are denied jobs in their field. The government should create an accelerated accreditation program that streamlines the process of learning Canadian methods and standards in order to close the gap between international degrees. To counteract the lack of cultural awareness, provincial governments should create elementary and high school courses that focus on the history and the influence of different cultures. Our strength is not in the number of immigrants we take in, but the number that make Canada their home.
Malgré notre jeunesse,
in spite of our youth, we still have a responsibility to remember what we learned here and to make something of it. That is why we encourage you to get involved in your community by working with your friends, by creating programs in your community centers so as to trigger a change in your communities. We are here to tell you that you have to be heard and you have to take action because the youth is the future of this country and of this world.
Who can help us make these changes.
are all Canadian. Nous sommes tous Canadiens.
Canada 150 comes with immense celebration for our history and accomplishments. Nonetheless, in moving forward, it is imperative that we examine our shortcomings, one of which is human rights. Join us as we take a look at where Canada must improve in the areas of mental health, Indigenous affairs, and civic engagement, and take charge in proposing the solutions as Canada's next generation.
Il n'y aurait aucun but à vous répéter que nous...
There is no point in repeating the fact that we have problems. We must find solutions. Today, we want to suggest a few alternatives. Let us not forget that we must act, and quickly. Human rights.
Experience mental illness in their lifetime. 24% of all deaths among 15 to 24 years old are caused by suicide. 70% of mental illness starts in childhood or adolescence. Everyone is affected by mental illness.
Je suis an Aborigine.
I'm an Aboriginal woman who doesn't know her language or her culture because there has been no education offered in this regard.
My cousin Serena was very recently murdered, making my family's fear of having one of our women taken reality. Addressing the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is essential for healing the relationship with Indigenous people.
Many of you have been celebrating Canada for 150 years.
We have been trying to heal for 150.
There is a disconnect between our government and youth. In fact, there is no national youth policy. A progressive solution to sustainable youth engagement was the creation of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. However, this council is unable to disclose important and relevant information to youth across the nation. This lack of communication disempowers youth and creates absences in civil engagement. Disengaged youth become disengaged voters. 43% of Canadian youth did not participate federally in 2015. Our democracy impacts all Canadians.
Now, it's no use to just say that we have a problem. Now, it's time to do something about it. Here's what we are proposing to solve them.
Mental illness needs to be understood by the public. This can be done by teaching it in schools and providing learning opportunities in the community. We need you to provide platforms for youth to speak and raise awareness. Take charge and hire therapists to support youth with mental illness.
Quand le gouvernement intègre
When the government integrates Indigenous teaching and information in our curriculum, citizens will understand and have a passion for these issues. This will have an impact on the government. There should be compulsory courses on Aboriginal society.
Funded community-run projects, which are more successful than external programs because they understand the needs of the people in their neighborhood. A food bank in Winnipeg called Got Bannock has thrived without government funding and could develop much greatly if the government were to lend support in ways like raising awareness.
Creating more opportunities for youth and giving them access to resources will broaden their leadership capacity. Through transparent committees, councils, and other decision-making groups, the involvement of youth will allow them to become the leaders of today.
Aujourd'hui, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'adolescents.
Youth must be involved in their communities. With the help of the federal government, we can encourage provincial governments to take measures to help young people become leaders. This year, we have organized all sorts of celebrations throughout the country. But before launching ourselves into futuristic projects, let's take a moment to look at improvements to be made to Canada. I would like to quote a statement made by a politician. There will be no peace on this planet as long as human rights are violated somewhere in the world.
We know the solutions. Now it is your duty, our duty, to make sure that these problems don't exist for our next generation. Let me leave you with this. Ignorance is no longer an excuse. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are gathered here together to discuss something very important. You all have many ideas to share with us about immigration and diversity. Now, it's time for Canada's youth to express themselves.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs et jeunes ambassadeurs ayant traversé le Canada. Nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis afin de discuter d'un sujet qui vous tient à cœur. Vous avez de nombreuses informations à nous partager par rapport à l'immigration et la diversité, et c'est maintenant le tour de nos jeunes ambassadeurs de s'exprimer par rapport à ce sujet.
Good luck with your discussion.
Bonne discussion.
Identity is just such a complex concept. Personally, for me, I identify as a Filipino Canadian. However, I wasn't born in the Philippines, nor was I born in Canada. So really, at the end of the day, your identity is unique to who you are, and only you will be able to understand it.
And that's really so interesting, as it is true to so many of us as Canadians. I mean, we pride ourselves in our diverse nation and our cultural mosaic of many people. And I mean, we have an unfortunate history of assimilation. But from this day on, forward, from this 150th, we will promote acculturation and taking on Canadian values as well as maintaining your own cultural backgrounds and sharing it with others.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Canada being this one giant canvas, and we're all paintbrushes, and we all have different colors and shades on it, and we all can go and leave a swatch on the canvas. But like, we all have different colors and whatnot, but we all need everyone else to help create Canada, because we're all together because we're on the same canvas, and we all have our different like colors, but it's still like, together, you know?
What's also important is not have fear in finding your own identity and to be proud of your own culture. Kids, youth, and even adults get easily influenced by many different things and people. So receiving a good education and seeing positive social media and teach people to be more accepting and have diversity, culture, caring, and loving isn't a bad thing.
And Canada has so many supportive organizations on a federal and local level that embrace newcomers into Canada and help them integrate into Canadian society, not only fulfilling their needs, but helping them gear on a path to success to contribute greatly to Canada. And I think we can all say, on coming from Canada's 150th onward, we encourage people to learn something about somebody else's background, and in return, teach them something about your own.
As we celebrate Canada 150 and embrace our country's diversity through immigration and refugees, we also have to remember our roots.
Our Indigenous people, the original stewards of the land, are often overlooked in the Canadian mosaic.
Right, and it's also really important that we integrate and incorporate the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action into our country, in every single way possible.
Exactly, because Indigenous people play such a significant role in our country's diversity and our country's strength.
And as youth, we want a proper education on Indigenous culture and principles. So this is the future we want for Canada, to see in Canada.
On a tous des différences, mais ces différences apportent la richesse. Par exemple, il apporte de la diversité, des différents points de vue et augmente nos ressources personnelles.
C'est vrai, on a des fêtes pour célébrer la francophonie et la diversité de nos langues. Ça nous permet de remettre en question notre façon de faire et cela ajoute à notre diversité dans nos relations.
Cependant, nous oublions trop souvent que nous avons des nombres ressemblables. Par exemple, tout le monde a ses propres buts. Même s'ils ne sont pas tous les mêmes, nous avons tous envie de réussir.
C'est totalement vrai. En réalité, si on retourne à la base, on est tous des êtres humains avec nos peurs. Et la seule chose qu'on veut vraiment, c'est être aimé et respecté pour qui l'on est vraiment.
Et nous devons garder en tête que nous sommes tous des êtres humains et ce sont nos particularités qui nous rendent plus forts et qui nous ressemblent. Ceci nous permet de travailler ensemble afin de collaborer et atteindre nos buts personnels et nos buts communs.
Pouvons-nous avoir votre attention, s'il vous plaît?
May we have your attention, please?
Nous aimerions remercier tous les jeunes ambassadeurs pour avoir partagé leurs idées.
Thank you to all the youth who shared their ideas.
Et rappelez-vous que nous faisons tous partie du Canada.
And remember, we are all part of Canada.
Je suis le Canada.
I am Canada.
Nous sommes le Canada.
We are Canada.
Good morning. Our group was to do our presentation on the balance of technology and the environment. Here are our recommendations on 3 innovations that will protect Canadian ecosystems and lead to a greener tomorrow.
Bonjour, nous avons fait sur 3 innovations qui protégeront l'écosystème canadien et nous protéger le demain plus vert.
Solar panels are extremely beneficial for Canada's future. They are a renewable energy source that provides little to no pollution or greenhouse gas emissions. Despite this, only 3% of Canada's energy is being produced by solar technology. However, we can do more. Solar panels are no longer restricted to rooftops, but have the potential to be incorporated. The government can help by assisting Canadians with the costs of solar panels, either by subsidizing some of the costs or continuing to put pressure on manufacturers to sell them at affordable prices. This will make solar energy more affordable for and available to Canadians, pushing us towards a cleaner and brighter future.
Les panneaux solaires sont très bons pour l'environnement et pour le futur.
Solar panels are very good for the future of Canada. Less than 3% of Canada's energy is produced by solar energy.
Canada est un défi face au prix de remplacer les femmes pour les installations solaires. le gouvernement pour aider les Canadiens et pourtant supporte le propre et le prometteur.
Now we're going to move on to the vehicles of the future. As some of you may know, there's currently a massive technological revolution taking place in the automotive industry. This is due to electric vehicles working in tandem with autonomous vehicles. And with this comes a lot of advantages, mainly the significant reduction in carbon and noise pollution, which comes because of properties of the electric motor, as well as the efficiency of autonomous vehicles. However, there is also massive disadvantages, most importantly, the insanely high financial barrier to entry into this market, and it's simply too high for most people. The government could actually do a lot to address this specific issue by investing in further subsidies on products which pollute less, and by also investing in infrastructure which could promote the use of these products, such as superchargers around the country.
Donc, on va parler à propos des véhicules du futur.
So we'll talk of the vehicles of the future. There's currently a massive revolution in the automotive industry with the electric vehicles. Those two technologies have many advantages, such as the reduction of CO2 and the pollution from its engine. The disadvantages would essentially be the high financial cost to enter this. To reduce this, the government could increase subsidies and could also invest in infrastructures that promote the use of the technologies, such as charging stations. Thank you.
The switch to renewable energy is on the horizon, but bulky batteries, non-degradable polymers, and inefficient alternatives still keep us caught in the past. Graphene, a material discovered just in 2004, is already putting an end to this problem. Graphene is a thin, single layer of pure carbon that takes the form of a hexagonal honeycomb lattice. It is best described as a micro-thin carbon sheet. Graphene has many applications, the best of these being water filtration, energy storage, and solar cells. Although graphene comes at an expensive price, it is also biodegradable and is more efficient than many other alternative solutions to the environmental problems we face. The European Union has put forward a grant of €1 billion towards the research and development of graphene, and we strongly encourage our own government to support this incredible material and the potential it withholds.
La pollution est un problème sérieux par rapport à la...
Pollution is a serious problem for the health of our environment, but we can improve our situation by incorporating graphene in the world. It is used to store energy, to filter water, and it efficiently inaudible, and it's biodegradable.
Avec vos contributions, nous pouvons...
With your contribution, we can involve all those technologies in the future of Canada.
These technologies can be a part of Canada's future. Thank you.
Merci.
A 150 years of momentum.
150 années d'élan.
Genocide.
Génocide.
This is the land of the First Nations, but they were taken.
De les familles et les maisons.
Assimilation, the thievery of their traditions, languages, cultures.
Les larmes sont tombées, les bleus ont formé et les vies ont été perdues.
The consequences still impact countless lives, for children did not feel the sensation of love until many years later.
Et maintenant, les réserves manquent de soins de santé éduqués et de nécessités vitales. Leur droit mérite d'être étendu.
For communication can lead to reconciliation.
Nous avons besoin de réconciliation.
We are in need of reconciliation.
By the time she was 12, she hated her body.
She hated her body for not being small enough.
She wanted to embody the girls in magazines.
Because she knew even then that women are always taken at face value. By the time she was 18, she had already been told exactly what she was capable of and definitively of what she was not.
She knew education was a risk, having read time and time again about Canadian university rape statistics.
But she went anyway.
By the time she was 30 with a bachelor's degree, she saw that despite qualification, job opportunities were distributed unequally between men and women.
When she found work, she was paid less and almost always expected to be wearing a dress. Feminism means equality for all people.
She is many of them. It's time, Canada.
Les droits de la femme sont les droits de la personne.
Women's rights are people's rights.
But do we stop to know their story?
Here they lie, alone, their rights forgotten, ostracized by our society. They try and get a job, but they can't get a job because they don't have a home. And they can't get a home because they don't have a job. And it goes on and on and on.
Tombant de plus en plus loin dans le cycle vicieux de la pauvreté.
Going deeper and deeper in poverty.
On a freezing winter night.
As the snow grows on the side of the street, so there's a gnawing hunger in their stomachs. They may not have a home, but they still have a heart.
Ils sont comme nous.
They're like us, mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters.
Treated any less.
Everyone wears a label. Labels given by society. Labels that limit who we could be. On nous appelle anormal.
We're called abnormal, we're thrown out but without knowing who we are simply because we're different. Our body is a prison.
And assumptions made about you just because your skin is a different color. Une minorité qui pense différemment.
Minorities who think differently. The weight of this is scary. We didn't want anything, but everybody is fleeing us.
Isolate you from society just because no one understands you. Tout le monde assume que tout le monde est hétéro.
Everybody presumes that everybody is heterosexual. What would they say if they knew what I'm thinking?
Can't love, a label that dictates what you can identify with. I am more than just my label.
We are in need of reconciliation.
Les droits des femmes sont les droits de la personne.
Why should they be treated any less?
Je suis plus que mon étiquette.
We are all united.
Unis. Tout le monde a le droit au soutien.
Everyone has the right to hope.
Tout le monde a le droit à la liberté.
Everyone has the right to humanity.
Let's give our presenters another big round of applause. Applaudissons chaleureusement nos jeunes présenteurs et présentrices.
It is now our honor to present His Excellency, the Right Honourable David Johnston, Governor-General of Canada.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, the Right Honourable David Johnston, Governor-General of Canada.
Chief Perry Bellegarde, parliamentarians, members of the Order of Canada, Experiences Canada leadership, supporters, and participants. Let me begin by acknowledging that we are gathering today on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. And what a magnificent presentation we have seen. I'm so struck by the energy, by the imagination, by the scope, and by the creativity and the compassion of these presentations. J'étais frappé par
I was struck by the imagination, the creativity, the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion of those young leaders.
The combination of the video, the visuals, the spoken word, and the dance. Bravo. Congratulations again. Well done. I'm delighted to be at your National Forum, which kicks off an exciting week here in Ottawa at a very special time in our history, the 150th anniversary of Confederation. Vous avez tenu des conversations.
You have had conversations in Vancouver, in Halifax, in Montreal and Winnipeg, and now in our capital.
Around an important question. What is Canada's greatest opportunity or challenge facing your generation? And these are just a few of the themes you touched on in response, as we saw moments ago. The environment and our natural resources, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, educating and preparing young people to succeed globally, diversity and inclusiveness toward all, mental health and well-being, human rights in Canada and worldwide, technology and the rapid pace of change. En tant que Gouverneur Général, je suis...
As Governor General, I'm very encouraged by the breadth of your discussions, because those themes and other priorities that you identified are essential for the success of our country.
To hear your summaries and conclusions from this experience. During these fora, you have heard from and been mentored by Order of Canada members whose motto is Desiderantes Melioram Patriam, which is Latin for they desire a better country. Vous désirez tous aussi un pays meilleur.
You all want a better country, and I'd like to thank you for your participation and your involvement in our society.
And to lead us forward with your energy, your ideas, and your passion for change. Ensemble, vous avez aidé à préparer.
Together, you helped prepare a project for the future of Canada, and you have challenged us to do better.
Great appetite for change in this country. And who will deliver it? Well, let it be those who dream of a better Canada, more fair and just and inclusive and creative. Let it be each of you here today. Let it be all those who participated in these gatherings. I'm so grateful to you all. This is a wonderful partnership between young people, Experiences Canada, and the Order of Canada, which celebrates its 150th anniversary this year. Même si les discussions ont...
Even if the discussions carried on the biggest challenges and that concern us, it's been full of optimism.
In a better country. It's within our grasp, but it won't create itself. We have to build it together. But first, we have to dream it together, and that's what this experience is all about. Remembering, reflecting, learning, and dreaming of our next 150 years as a country. I can't wait to see where you will take us next. Let me just leave you with two of my favorite lines from George Bernard Shaw that go this way. Some people see things as they are and wonder why. We dream of things that ought to be and ask why not. Kitchi, Miigwech, merci, thank you.
Your Excellency, on behalf of all of us here today, particularly the youth participants, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and for your thoughtful remarks this morning. Une partie importante de notre
An important part of our project is to establish links between Canadian youth and leaders but also recognizing the contributions of our citizens who really want a better country. We are proud to be associated to the Order of Canada to celebrate its 50th anniversary this year and highlight members of the Order in all our events.
Pour continuer avec notre célébration,
To continue with our celebration, we would now like to welcome two young interpreters from throat singing from Inuit Nation, Samantha Kigutak and Caroline de Grandpré, who have already charmed us during the swearing-in ceremony of the Prime Minister in 2015.
Arnavik.
Hello, my name is Samantha Kigutak Metcalf. I'm 13 years old, in grade 7, and I love to throat sing. My dad's family is from Nain, Nunatsiavut, and my mom's family is from Arctic Bay, Nunavut.
Hello, my name is Kaylin Nanauk de Grandpré. I'm 12 years old, in grade 7, and I love to throat sing. My dad is French Canadian, and my mom is Scottish and Inuit, and we are Tanachik,
which means two souls.
Throat singing is a game between two women or girls. Whoever laughs or messes up first loses.
We learned throat singing at Ottawa Inuit Children's Center when we were 2 years old.
We throat sing because back in residential school times, throat singing was banned, and now we're proud to be bringing back our culture. We're Inuit and proud.
In throat singing, there's a follower and a leader. I am the leader, and Kaylin is the follower. So that means Kaylin makes a sound that I make a split second after me.
The first song that we will be doing is called The Poor Little Dog. The story behind this song is that a girl had a pack of pups, and everyone told her that the runt of the litter would die through the winter. So she sang the song every night to the pup for strength and encouragement, and it became the leader of the pack.
The second song that we will be doing is called the Love Song. It is a lullaby for the babies.
Or anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Tarnik. As we mentioned earlier, an important aspect of the Canada 150&Me initiative is to provide opportunities to connect young Canadians with exemplary Canadians already active in their communities and in ways to help better their country as well as the world. We are pleased to be joined here this morning with some extraordinary leaders who have some important words to share. I would like to first invite Jim Patrick, VP Government Relations for Shaw, Inc., representing one of our national sponsors and the sponsor for the National Youth Forum activities, to introduce our first speaker.
Hi there, good morning. I want to thank Experiences Canada for inviting me to be part of your very important day. I thought there were going to be some fire dancers after the throat singing, and I'm glad they're not going to make me do it, but I'm told we made some adjustments on the program. Shaw is very proud to support Experiences Canada's National Youth Forum. It's part of our 150 initiative, where we're celebrating Canada's 150th anniversary at Shaw by supporting 150 organizations and events and individuals across the country who make a difference in their community. Je suis fier d'être ici aux côtés de Son Excellence, le très honorable David Johnston.
I'm delighted to follow our Governor General, the Right Honourable David Johnston, and I'm here to introduce to you Chief Perry Bellegarde.
Entire adult life putting into practice his strong beliefs in the laws and traditions instilled in him by the many chiefs and elders he's known over the years. In 2014, he was named National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, a national advocacy organization representing more than 900,000 First Nations citizens living on 634 First Nations communities, as well as in towns and cities across our country. National Chief Bellegarde has passionately and effectively advocated for the rights of First Nations people in Canada and abroad, most notably including speaking at the United Nations World Conference on Indigenous Peoples in New York. It's a real privilege to have him with us here today, and I would ask you to please join me in welcoming National Chief Perry Bellegarde to your stage.
Thank you so much. Mr. Nenaskamon, Pixquine on Absisi, Nenaskum. Kanaskum tenua kakia no temtek no akomagnak. Tapoe mias kanu tainans manatu kanaskumtin. Jenishna bekal Algonquin peoples kanaskum tenua. Mr. Deborah Morrison kanaskumtin stema. Just very quickly, friends and relatives, to acknowledge in Cree. I speak Cree and a little bit in Cree. I'm very happy to be here. Nenaskamun, very happy to be here. Kenanaskum Tinawa, I thank you all, my friends and relatives. And I gave thanks to Notawinan Samanatu, the creator, for this beautiful day. And I acknowledge Chinishna Bek, the Algonquin peoples, their traditional lands and territories. And I thanked as well and acknowledged Deborah for the gift of Stay Mao tobacco. In our tradition, in our customs, to be given tobacco is a big thing. When you're invited somewhere, you offer tobacco, you accept, you're kind of bound to be there. And whenever we take anything or you ask something from an elder, tobacco is always there. So I thank you for that and acknowledge you all again. And I've got about 10 minutes, and I just want to say to all the young men and women here, wow, that was fantastic. I just wanted to, myself, your leaders already, the powerful impact in that last half hour just watching and listening to you all, that you have such a powerful message. You've talked about change. You've talked about change locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. You've talked and made presentations about the importance of the environment and how we now as older people have to leave something for the next generation. And there's just 7 generations yet to come. So you've demonstrated that strong vision, that strong wisdom. You talked about the importance of water, because water is life, and you need water to have life. We need clean air, and you need water to live. You've talked about that. You've talked about the importance of immigration and how we have to rebuild Canada and having a speedier, more effective, efficient way to have people come to this country with the skills. You've talked about reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and the rest of Canadian society. You've talked about technology. And you've talked about how do we move as a society from our dependency on fossil fuels to renewable energy, solar, wind, gee. Like, I was telling my wife Valerie, like, holy smokes, these young people get it. So to me, I just wanted to applaud you first and foremost for that strong message. And so as National Chief, just to be here to show, and I've always said it this way, that you don't have to be elected to be a leader. And you're already leading. You're already leading in a good way. And you're all going to become, whether you be scientists or doctors, lawyers, become premiers, become prime ministers, become national chiefs, you're going to have impact on policy and legislation. And already you can see that in your minds and heads and hearts and what you're trying to do. And so for me as national chief, and I always, when I was in Saskatchewan, and I grew up on a small reserve called Little Black Bear. And in Saskatchewan, there's 74 First Nations. And I used to always take the time to acknowledge the Dene Saint-Lenay, the Dene peoples in the north, then the Cree people, the Swampy Cree, the Plains Cree, the Woodland Cree, then the Ojibwe people, the Saulteaux people, then the Sioux people, the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota people. There's 6, 7 different tribes in Saskatchewan. But now, if I was going to acknowledge all 59, it'd take too long, so I can't acknowledge all of our different nations and tribes across Turtle Island. But I sense this piece as well about the importance of identity and language. And we're speaking this beautiful English language. Mais oui, je parle français un petit peu.
And I do speak a bit of French, dear friends. You're very important in my heart, in my mind. L'anglais, le français.
Have reconciliation in Canada. The importance of revitalizing Indigenous languages is very important. It's our identity as First Nations people. You've demonstrated even in your talks here, the impacts of the residential schools, all of those things. And we can learn from that past. And I've said it this way, that in Canada's 150th birthday, I go across Canada and I always get challenged, well, what are Indigenous peoples going to celebrate? You know, should we celebrate the colonization, the oppression, all those things that we talk about? The 5 to 7 times the youth suicide rate, the 132 boil water advisories, the overcrowded housing, all those negative things. And I say, It's the next 150 years that are going to be important. It's the next 150 years that we have to provide hope and inspiration for and to not only Indigenous peoples, but all of Canada. And it's you young men and women that are going to help write that chapter. And so you're the ones that are going to breathe and give life to that word reconciliation by supporting the revitalization of Indigenous languages in Canada. You're the ones that are going to help close that gap and invest in strong education for everybody in Canada on math and science, and technology and everything else that's there. You're the ones that are going to find that way to move from our dependency on fossil fuels and start investing in solar and wind and geothermal and electric cars. And you're the ones that are going to really breathe life into those words of diversity. Through diversity, there's much strength, and your acceptance and your validation that everybody's contribution in this world and this country is equal. You're the ones going to do that. And that, for me, provides much hope and inspiration. When I think about to Canada now, and I'm going to leave with my worldview, but we're working on all those things that you demonstrated because there is a gap that exists, and we have to close that gap. Canada, according to the United Nations Human Development Index, 6. Same indices to Indigenous peoples, we're 63rd. This is what we're going to close. You're going to help close that gap. And when we deal with the Prime Minister, we talk about missing murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. We talk about implementing all 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We talk about investments in education and housing and water and removal of the 2% funding cap. We talk about a law and policy review. And then recently we talk about two very important things. The revitalization of our Indigenous languages and a way to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And so if you all as young men and women can embrace things like that, that's the road map to reconciliation. And you can do it federally, you can do it provincially, you can do it municipal-wise, you can do it in your homes. The reconciliation. That UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So I see much hope. I see much bright light. I see much coming together. And the Canada that we all live in now, I believe in the next 150 years, that gap's going to close through your energy, through your spirits, through your innovation. And our worldview this is my last point to you all. If we can incorporate an Indigenous person's worldview, our perspective, into all that we do in the public sector and private sector, I think it would have a very profound impact on everything we're trying to do. Because in our worldview, we don't see any color. That's how we see it. We see don't any color. I don't care if you're black, red, yellow, white, brown. We don't see color. Because in ceremony, and I just finished our Sundance Lodge in Nikanit Reserve in southern Saskatchewan, our old people, our elders, both men and women, they acknowledge the fact that we're the two-legged. We're the two-legged tribe. So when I say, Kah kiao noako maganak, no temtik, all of my relatives, I'm acknowledging all of you, the two-legged tribe. But then they'll also acknowledge our relatives, the four-legged ones. They're our relatives. We'll acknowledge our relatives, the ones that fly, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl. They'll also acknowledge how we fit into this world. They'll acknowledge Mother Earth for everything that she gives us. They'll also acknowledge and give thanks to Father Sky, give thanks to Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun. They'll also acknowledge our relatives, the star people. And they'll also acknowledge the male plants and the female plants. All of creation. We fit into that web of life. And then, most importantly, at the end, they'll acknowledge those four grandmother spirits that look after and care for the water. They'll acknowledge that there's one that looks after the rainwater, there's one that looks after the salt water, one that looks after the fresh water, and there's a grandmother spirit when water breaks, when life comes, that power of women. So we're all part of that. That's our Indigenous worldview. And so in that sense, we're all related and we're all connected. And the more if we can think and breathe and have that in our minds and hearts and spirits in terms of public policy or legislation, you're going to get a more robust policy and a more robust legislation that considers not only generations now, but into the future, because we're all connected in that web of life. So to the young men and women that shared their ideas, thoughts, and their energy and their innovation, thank you so much. You are providing that hope and inspiration. And for us as First Nations people, Indigenous peoples, we've learned, we know what happened in the past. It's the next future, that next 150 years, where that chapter will be written, and it's going to be bright, filled with hope and inspiration. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Chef Bellegarde.
Thank you very much, Chief Bellegarde. I will now ask Kyle Hill, President of the Board of Directors of Experiences Canada, to present our next guests.
Thank you so much, Adam. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Hill, and I'm the chair of the Board of Experiences Canada. And first, let me just say and echo the National Chief's words by saying, wow, that was amazing. Did the 150 youth actually just meet each other like 2 days ago? And did you actually come up with all that in the last 36 hours? Is there like a casting director or a talent search person here or something? That was incredible. You should create your own organization that puts this on like every month across Canada, because it was incredible. So congratulations to you, and thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. It's so clear that you know your history, you know science, you know language, but most importantly, you had such a keen understanding of empathy and fairness and equity in this country. And I think I am certainly convinced, if I had any doubts about the future, that you are on a path to leadership and making this country a better place. So thank you so much for that. At Experiences Canada, we believe in you. We believe in the power and influence of young people. And we know that more than any generation that has come before them, you, the youth of today, are very quickly connecting with the rest of the country and the rest of the world. And so we want to encourage you to be the global leaders that you can and should be in this country. But we also believe that to be effective citizens of the world, young people first need to be strong-rooted in their own knowledge and understanding in this country of what it means to be Canadians. Which is why so much of Experiences Canada's programming, including this Canada 150&Me program, is focused on offering youth an opportunity to explore their own country, their own identity, their own history, and their own roots. One of the amazing things about Canada is that you can discover so much about the world's cultures and languages and challenges and issues without ever leaving our own borders. There's so much we can discover by talking first and listening first, and then sharing with each other. And although we have so much to be proud of as a country, as we saw this morning, we also know that we're not perfect, and there are a lot of issues to resolve, and certainly many things we could be doing better or differently. Nous sommes enthousiastes.
We are very enthusiastic seeing the possibilities for the Canadian youth to play a bigger role in the world, and that is why we want the 150th anniversary of Canada to give the youth their chance to think about the challenges and opportunities for Canada also as in a world context. It's better to know the challenges with which we're confronted here at home, as well as the national and local organizations that are working on this. It gives us a good direction to become world citizens.
This project talked about just about every topic you can imagine. But one of the biggest ones was the challenges facing our natural environment. So we're pleased to welcome here today, and I am pleased to introduce someone who knows quite a lot about that topic. Will Amos was elected as Member of Parliament for Pontiac, which is a region just on the other side of the Ottawa River in Quebec. He was elected in October 2015. Before his election, he was the regional director of a national environmental law charity, and he and the charity offered free legal advice to community groups and individuals regarding environmental matters. He has worked in the public sector, he's worked in the private sector, he's worked in the nonprofit sector, he has authored publications on many subjects around environmental law, he's participated in parliamentary committees, and we're very lucky to have him both as a member of parliament and here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Will Amos.
Bonjour tout le monde, merci d'être ici.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here. And thank you to the organizers, Experience Canada. I'm flabbergasted to be here. It's really exceptional. I'm really inspired.
And Chief Bellegarde for his own inspiring words, and also to our Governor General. I feel as though I'm the nervous one on stage, is what I'm going to say. When you follow throat singers and then great leaders. And then you're going to be followed by great writers and thinkers, such as my friend Charlotte Gray. I mean, this is it's an amazing thing. J'aimerais commenter.
I would like to come back to the protection of our Aboriginal cultures. I'd like to link this topic to the environment because they are fundamentally linked. The crisis of the extension of our Aboriginal languages and the need to protect those languages and to re-energize those languages is linked to that protection.
One of the reasons that the Indigenous languages are in such danger is for the same reason that our environment, our water, our lands are in danger, and it's because we don't pay them enough respect, we don't pay enough attention to them, and we need to make sure that we care for them much more comprehensively. I went out on a limb the other day in the House of Commons, and as you can tell, I'm a young parliamentarian. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. For National Aboriginal Day, which in the future will be known as National Indigenous Peoples Day, I took the step of working with a woman from the Algonquin community of Kitigan-Zibi, a teacher there. She's retired, and she's been teaching me a little bit about the Algonquin language. And so I worked with her to come up with a statement in the House. And when you're a member of Parliament, about 3 or 4 times a year, you can make a statement for 55 seconds, not much time. And I wanted to say something about the importance of the preservation of Indigenous languages in Algonquin. So we worked on it, and if you want to see what that's all about, it's on my Facebook page. The main point I wanted to make, though, was that I walked into Parliament thinking, I've got to do something to make a difference. That's the whole point. I was doing something to make a difference before as an environmental lawyer, and I said to myself, you know what? It's amazing to represent clients in the public interest to protect the environment, but if I have the opportunity to change the way government does runs its programs and policies, and certain laws that had been, I thought, reformed in the wrong direction by previous governments, that's worth giving up a legal career to do that. And it's not just about environment, right? It's about making sure that you can do everything possible within your community. Pontiac is a very, very interesting place. C'est tout près d'ici, mais c'est aussi loin.
It's very close to here, but it's also very far from here. Because you can go 20 minutes from here, you'll be in my riding.
West or 2.5 hours north and still be in my riding. And so that means that there are a lot of different interests, a lot of different perspectives. If you're ever going to be a member of Parliament, I hope each and every one of you will consider seriously becoming elected, getting elected and running for office, whether it's a Parliament or at a provincial or at a band council level or municipal level. I hope you'll seriously consider what is it that I can do, whether it's environmentally or within our communities, to protect them. And so that's what I walked into Parliament trying to do. How can I best protect the Pontiac? What can I do to bring the knowledge that I've gained over the last 20 years? And I've realized that members of Parliament, although they may seem as though they've got all the answers sometimes, and they may seem as though they've made it, well, you haven't. And you're still always trying to figure out, well, what can you do? Because there's a big difference, of course, between being a member of Parliament who is in the cabinet and a member of Parliament who's a backbencher. I'm a backbencher. I don't make decisions for the government. And that means I need to work with the government. I need to work with Prime Minister Trudeau, his cabinet, to help achieve differences, to help pave a path for change. And so, as a parliamentarian, I have that power to speak, and I just mentioned one of those powers that I exercise, the right to make a statement and to use the Algonquin language in the service of the protection of that Indigenous language that is native to my region of Pontiac. But also, I have the power not just of speech, but I have the power to work with parliamentarians on standing committees. And this is where I want to challenge you guys, because I think this is one of those areas of our education system that goes entirely ignored. I know I didn't know anything about standing committees until I got to grad school, and even then, I didn't really dig into it. Just going to do my time check. Okay. So, who here knows what a standing committee is, a parliamentary standing committee? Has anybody heard of a parliamentary standing committee? Hands up. Okay, so about 50% of people I'm seeing hands up. One of the biggest things that a member of parliament can actually do is to work in a standing committee, which is made up of the exact same proportion of members of parliament that you would see in the House of Commons. And they work on specific subject areas. In my case, I sit on the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development. And that committee can choose whatever it wants to look at and can do studies, call witnesses, and then ultimately write a report that provides recommendations to the government. And those recommendations are difficult to ignore, because they're on the public record, the media is covering them, and they're topics that are of great concern. We've done several studies in our standing committee, and I think that all young Canadians who care about an issue should definitely consider paying attention to what standing committees related to the environment and natural resources are doing. One of the things that we did really recently, which I think touches upon some of the themes that you guys have been working on in your presentations here, and which were just so inspiring, goes to the issue of toxic substances and their impacts on our water and our air and our land. And it goes to the issue we spoke today about technologies and rapidly developing technologies. We've spoken about the need to respect at a community level water and clean water. The committee report that was just prepared by the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development goes specifically to one federal law that really has an impact on the way our toxic substances are assessed for their safety and their impacts on human and environmental health, and also on the management of those chemicals. Now, it sounds like I'm getting really technical, right? I'm starting to get into laws, I'm starting to get into very specific environmental topic, not necessarily climate change, although this law actually does provide the federal government with the ability to regulate climate change. But what I'm trying to focus us on is where you can actually start digging in deeper, because all of you here, as Grand Chief Bellegarde rightly said, you're already leaders. You're already there. And now I'm going to challenge you to dig deeper. And on an issue that you might care about, I'll give you, this is an example of toxic substances and the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, but you could apply this across the board in a variety of different committee settings. Look at the committee's reports. The one that we just produced is really thick and meaty, and if you read it, would actually help you get a pretty deep understanding about what we are doing, what we're not doing, what we could and should be doing on toxic chemicals, and where we hope the government will act in the future. And there's no guarantee that we'll get everything that we want from this committee report, but the interesting thing about it was we actually had to go through a process of negotiation, discussion, debate with other parties. And it wasn't as though everyone was in agreement all the time, as you can imagine. We worked really hard with our Conservative colleagues, our NDP colleagues, and when they came in to discuss with us, our Green colleague as well. One of the biggest things that I think that is ignored, perhaps, is just the role that average, everyday citizens, and none of you are average, everyday citizens, but just think of the average, everyday citizen, the role that average, everyday citizens can play in pushing our parliamentarians and our governments to do more on the basis of what is being done in the committees. Every single one of you can submit a letter to a committee and suggest to the Environment Committee, for example, we think you should study this topic. And you'd have a bunch of parliamentarians read it right away. And I think that if you guys tell us what to study, and if you take the time to review what we have studied, and you reflect on it, and you tell the government what you think about it, then we can all together point ourselves in a stronger direction in a post-150 era. Because I think we're all aspiring to be great, we're all aspiring to a better Canada. We all want to find ourselves in it, but we know we have to challenge ourselves. I know our government wants to challenge itself. We're doing that every single day. And I know every member of Parliament, regardless of their political stripe, wants to get there as well. So I want to thank you for all of the effort that you've put into it. I know that when I was your age, there's no chance I could have performed that way. The level of performance, the theater, the emotion, the conviction, I didn't have that. It takes special Canadians to achieve that, and so I congratulate you, and I hope that we can engage in an even tighter dialogue between parliamentarians who have to be held accountable, like me, and you, who are our future leaders, who can keep all of us going in the right direction with the vision and passion that you have. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amos. Please welcome Krista Scadwell, Vice President Communications for Great West Life, to the stage to present our next speaker.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more. I couldn't have done that at that age, that's for sure. Good morning, distinguished guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Great West Life, it is my pleasure to attend the National Youth Forum. As our nation celebrates its 150th anniversary later this week, it is natural that we would take the time to reflect on our collective history and to look at the opportunities and the challenges we face in the years ahead. It is clear from the presentations that we've witnessed this morning that our country's future generations are more capable of tackling head-on any challenge that our nation will face. I have to comment, the passion that you have is incredible, and don't lose that as you age. Sometimes we forget our youthfulness as we get older, but I think we're in great hands after seeing you today. The incredible contributions of all the young people here today are the reason that our company supports important initiatives such as this. We believe that it's our responsibility to give back and help build stronger communities together. That is why we have been longtime supporters of Experiences Canada's forums and exchanges. I can see that our investment is having a positive impact by helping bring together so many bright young adults who are making their voices heard. So as you participate in this forum, know that we live in a country where your views matter and where you can directly contribute to a brighter future for all. The next speaker exemplifies this fact. Charlotte Gray is one of Canada's best-known writers and author of 10 acclaimed books of literary nonfiction. Born in Sheffield, England, and educated at Oxford University and the London School of Economics, she began her writing career in England as a magazine editor and newspaper columnist. After coming to Canada in 1979, she worked as a political commentator, book reviewer, and magazine columnist before she turned to biography and popular history. Charlotte's most recent book is The Promise of Canada, 150 Years, People and Ideas That Have Shaped Our Country. Her previous books have explored a diverse collection of Canadian characters and personalities, including women's rights activist Nellie McClung, inventor Alexander Graham Bell, and Indigenous poet Pauline Johnston. Charlotte has been awarded 5 honorary doctorates. An adjunct research professor in the Department of History at Carleton University, Charlotte is a member of the Order of Canada and a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. Clearly, she is an individual who has contributed so much to our country. It gives me great honor to introduce you to Charlotte Gray. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista, for that really lovely introduction. Thank you, Experiences Canada, for giving me this opportunity to speak today, because I can tell you, I am feeling so good about the next 150 years. Your presentations were full of optimism and hope and a real focus on the issues. It's been an extraordinary experience for everybody in this room. But I just want to, as the last of the speakers, to say one thing, which is that in a world where, in fact, so often we've lost contact with our past and we're hurtling into an uncertain future, and a future that I know for many of you, however much energy and dynamism you have, and my goodness, you have it, you are, every single one of you, a leader, you are also thinking, where is my place? How am I going to find myself? And what I want to say is, this country has great strengths, and don't lose touch with our history, because our history can actually teach us quite a lot. Now, I'm going to tell you about a young man 180 years ago who was growing up in a fairly rural environment, who looked around him and he thought, where is my place in the world? I know that I'm in this sort of buzzing, busy society, but my people are actually just getting marginalized. My people are about to lose their language and their culture if we're not careful. And this young man decided to become a rebel. He became a rebel against what was called the Chateau clique, which was the, we know these people, they're very well-dressed white men who speak English. He was very worried that he would never be able to find his place in a world run exclusively by them. He became a rebel along with many of his friends. The rebellion went off the rails. This was Les Patriotes in 1837 in Quebec. It went off the rails. Some of his friends were arrested and executed. Others were transported. Many went into exile. There were rumors that this young man himself had been killed. There was an article saying, such a shame, so much promise, disappeared. Actually, he just lay low, and then he crept back into the city closest to where he'd grown up, which was Montreal. He crept back in, and he became a member of that society. He was doing well, but he never lost that sense of wanting to protect his culture, but be part of the larger world. And 30 years after, 1837, the Patriot uprising, he became one of the fathers of Confederation. He had seen the problem when he was young, not much older than you, and as an adult, he did fix it. His name was Georges-Étienne Cartier. He's one of the most important of the fathers of Confederation. You all know that picture. 23 men dressed in extraordinarily stuffy clothes, sitting on a stairs outside, sitting on the steps outside the Lieutenant Governor's house in Prince Edward Island. You all know them, and there's John A. Macdonald in the middle, and Georges-Étienne Cartier is standing just on his right. What did Georges-Étienne Cartier do? He made sure that this country, the Dominion of Canada as it was called then, was built on compromise. It was a country where, in fact, you could be part of the larger whole, the federal government system with its capital here in Ottawa, but you could also be part of your society. In his case, Quebec, the French-speaking part of this country, where in fact, because we have a federal system, they have their own provincial government, and they were, in 1867, they were able to keep their culture, their language, their different legal system, their sense of who they were. This has never been a country built on ethnic homogeneity, as many other countries have been. It's a country built on compromise. And it's a compromise that requires people to keep talking. Just as Grand Chief Bellegarde said, it's a country where, in fact, we need to make it inclusive and to talk about our differences, that this is the way, in fact, that we can move forward. It's a country that's a big contrast in that way to the country to the south of us, the United States. This is a country that's built on passion, determination, protection of rights, resilience, but also one that's built on compromise. So the first thing I'd like you to take away from today in terms of the past rather than the future, but the strengths that we can take from the past, is the view that Canadians don't solve problems by shouting at each other. They find ways of accommodating difference. It's a country built on pragmatism. The second lesson that I'd like to suggest from our history, which we've seen today so brilliantly, just in the way that you put those presentations together, it's a country built on collective effort. It's a country where groups come together, where individuals come together. They don't expect one person to get all the glory. Just think of the number of groups in our society. Here we are in the National Gallery. So what group am I thinking of here? The group of 7. I'm a strong feminist. Who do I think of in the past, in the Canadian past, who played an enormous role in making sure, first of all, that women got the vote, but more particularly that women would be able to sit in the Senate? The famous 5. This is a country built on collective effort. And one character in our past, Tommy Douglas, understood that that was something we really needed, and we needed to look after each other and to understand that Canadians should care about each other's welfare. And he introduced, with a lot of support, Medicare, which is one of the characteristics, the absolutely most important national icons now, not just because, in fact, we do have a healthcare system where you don't have to produce your credit card when you go to the emergency room, but also in our attitude to each other. We are responsible for each other. That collective effort is something deeply rooted in our history, and going forward, we can build on that idea that this is how the country works. The third lesson I'd love you to just remember as we go forward in our history is that actually this country is constantly reinventing itself. We would not be having the presentations, these wonderful experiences that you've had 100 years ago. I have to say that 100 years ago, this was a pretty mingy, narrow-minded country, largely British and determined to keep everybody else out, and, of course, to keep the Indigenous peoples marginalized. We have some pretty dark chapters in our history. We've kept out, at different periods, Chinese Canadians, we've kept out Jews, we've kept out Sikhs, all kinds of groups who did arrive in our country were then interned, including Japanese Canadians and Ukrainian Canadians. I'm not pretending that we get brownie points for everything. But in each generation, our values have evolved, our principles have changed. We have moved into a period where we are a much more diverse and inclusive society. And we recognize those dark chapters. We can't disavow them, but what we can do is we can learn from them. We can learn that, in fact, residential schools and marginalizing Indigenous peoples was destructive for everybody, not just the individuals concerned, but for our societies. And we are doing our best to learn from those mistakes as we go forward. And I can tell you, actually, that in 50 years' time, yes, I think that this will be a society that has come to terms with many of those scars in our past, but it's also going to be a society in 50 years' time that will look at us, particularly my generation, and say, what were you thinking? What were you thinking when you started buying water in plastic bottles that are ruining the oceans of the world? What were you thinking in not building more public transport and doing away with your cars so that, in fact, you could reduce the carbon load? Every generation reinvents this country. It needs to reinvent it. We need to keep moving forward. But we're never going to be perfect because the next generations will see the shortcomings that we have been responsible for. So we have to understand this is a dynamic process. Our history is here. The past is present. We are the future, but we're also the here and now. So I just want to say, I felt so good after seeing those presentations. I realize you future leaders are going to keep pushing for this country to be more inclusive, to keep up a level of discourse which is civil but well-informed, to ensure that people are not left behind. And I know that you've had the most extraordinary experiences yourself as youth leaders in meeting people from all over the country, realizing your differences, but also realizing what you have in common. So 3 lessons from history. 1, you've seen the problems, you will have the power to fix them, just as Georgette and Cartier did. And his lesson of compromise is one that we must stick to. 2nd, it's collective effort. We work together. And the 3rd is keep changing, keep moving forward. But don't let go of the past. I wish you the very best of luck. It has been such a privilege to be on this stage and also to be talking with you and to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gray. To conclude our program today, I would now like to invite the President and CEO of Experiences Canada, Deborah Morrison, to take the stage. Mesdames et Messieurs, Deborah Morrison, Présidente et Directrice Générale d'Expériences Canada.
Thank you very much, Adam and Sharifa. Before I go any further, I have to commend the 2 of you, as well as all of the youth ambassadors, as well as all of our youth participants, for delivering today's presentations so brilliantly. Please give yourselves another round of applause. Canada 150&Me is an entirely youth-led initiative. Pretty much everything from the design of the program to the organization of events to the execution of them today has been driven by youth. Well, at least everybody but me. I would like to be, but I'm not. And that's what makes it so exceptional and so extraordinary. Our whole purpose in creating Canada 150&Me was to provide an opportunity for young Canadians to take a leadership role in marking the 150th as a milestone and setting the stage for the next 150 years. I can't begin to tell you how proud I am of you taking up that challenge and the incredible work that you've put in so far in just 2 days here. D'autant que je suis extrêmement...
I'm also very proud of you about taking on the challenge today, and I hope more than anything that this demonstrates what you can accomplish by working together.
To do together in just 1 day. Laissez-le servir de cas pour savoir pourquoi.
Let this serve as a case in point for why we are investing in the friendships and connections you will build here in Ottawa this week.
Extremely proud of you for rising up to the challenge today. I hope more than anything, it demonstrates what you can accomplish in just 1 day working together and what more you can do together as you continue to get to know each other. Let it serve as a case in point for why we're investing in the friendships and connections that you're going to build here in Ottawa this week, and how much stronger you will be for taking the time to stay in touch with each other long after the Experiences Canada 150&Me National Forum has ended. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the extraordinary staff and crew here at the National Gallery of Canada who have been so generous in hosting us this week and helping to facilitate the youth performances today. Au nom d'Expériences Canada, il y a plusieurs personnes.
In the name of Experiences Canada, there's many people we'd like to thank for having made this possible. More specifically, Canada 150 and the program The Youth Are Committed by Heritage Canada, and our main sponsor, the Bank TD Group. We would also like to thank our national sponsors, Great West Life, the McCain Foundation, So and WestJet.
Ottawa, this group is going to have an unforgettable time and adventure that would not have been possible without the financial support of our national sponsors, nor possible without the tremendous engagement of our program partners that include the Aga Khan Foundation, the Canadian Museum of Nature, the Canadian Museum of History, Friends of Gatineau Park, the City of Ottawa, Ottawa 2017, and Parks Canada. We would also like to acknowledge our travel partners, Air Canada and Via Rail. So now for the youth participants, the hard work has ended. For you young students who have earned the opportunity to travel to Ottawa, and again, for thinking through some extremely creative ways for sharing the ideas of youth from across the country. But also for the incredible experiences Canada staff who has spent countless hours working and planning to make sure that every minute that you have in the national capital is optimized to the greatest potential. Thank you all for your tremendous participation today. Your voice matters, and your actions do make a difference in ensuring Canada continues to grow and develop as one of the best places on earth for each and every citizen living in it. Merci tout le monde pour...
Thank you to all of you for your participation. It was really inspiring to see you all and hear you all. More than anything, continue to be heard, and you have every reason to be proud of yourselves for what you did today. Thank you also to the youth of many schools who came to participate here in Ottawa and online. Your presence is truly appreciated.
And our show, it is my pleasure to invite Thieland Kignoswe to the stage. Thieland is 14 years old, and he is a Bear Clan member, and he has a very special presentation. And Thieland, if you could come forward. I know that the National Chief already talked about the gift of tobacco, but we know you have an extraordinary gift, and Thieland is in training to be a teacher for the rest of us, not just your own community. So we want to give you this gift of tobacco as well to really respect and appreciate your taking the time to share your culture with us here today. Miigwech.
Bonjour, Ani Tanse Kwekwe Wache, Nimki Benoje Kapisi Samat Namasi Sistishnikas Mangandodum Kajunang Nongjiba. Good morning, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? So, hello, my English name is Thieland Kignoswe. I'm Korean Potawatomi from Wapulam First Nation Kajunang Territory. I'm part of the Wolf Clan. I'm 14 years old. I go to school here in Ottawa. Well, yeah, here in Ottawa. And I'm going to share a little bit about my culture. So today I brought with me some hoops. Anybody ever seen the hoop dance before? So these hoops originate from the Hopi Nation down in Arizona. And I've had the chance to see a couple of performers, and they've really inspired and educated me. So I hope I can share a little bit of my culture with you guys today. So miigwech for inviting me, and thank you very much. Miigwech, thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. Happy 150th birthday, Canada.
Thank you for being here. Bon 105e anniversaire, Canada. Merci.